She's here to answer 3 questions that are plastered around the room. Who does she aspire to be as a teacher? What opportunities is she engaged in to become a better one? Now she's going to maximize her student teaching internship this coming spring with Dr. Tiffany Turrentine and folks at W.B. Saul High School in Philadelphia. We're so proud and happy to have her here today. Remind you that whenever your time comes to an end at the end of the 30 minutes, we will have a question and answer session. Kendra will be relating the questions from the online audience. We ask that you please repeat those both face-to-face and online so those online can hear before you answer your questions, but queuing all of you up to think of questions to ask of Riley during her presentation.
Okay, perfect.
Riley, they're all yours.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Curry. Welcome to my final presentation. If you guys didn't have a chance to pick up a handout on the way in, this QR code will take you to a virtual handout. Before I talk about who I am as a teacher, I want to just talk a little bit about who am I, who is Riley. So I grew up on my family's farm, and my dad now owns and operates our farm. We do soybeans, corn, and we are also allowed to do beef cows as a kid. So every 2 years, we would get beef cows, we would raise them, and it's kind of like a puppy. You get them, they're really cute when they're small, but eventually they get bigger than you. And they're not that cute anymore. But this love for agriculture followed me to where I am now. And I still really love to go to the farm and help with different things. I love to mow the grass. This love for agriculture led me into getting involved in FFA. In high school, I was super involved in FFA. I did all the CDEs, and I was essentially as close to being a state officer that you can get without actually being a state officer. So I was a second-year scholar. I was on the nominating committee, and there's actually probably a few faces that you people recognize in this picture. They probably look a little bit different than they did back then, but a bunch of us actually joined Ag Ed. And another team that I was really fortunate to have the chance to be a part of was my tribal softball team. This sort of added a whole other aspect of being on a team, and I was really grateful to grow my friend group and work with these girls for 4 years to just work with being on a team. And I'm great friends with most of them still. A few of us have parted ways, but yeah, that was just a really great experience. I know my mom misses it, I miss it. So that leads me to my first question of who do I aspire to be as a teacher? In the beginning, we were tasked with making a teaching philosophy for Dr. Curry's AE 100 class. I'm pretty sure this was my first semester of college. And my original teaching philosophy was okay, but for me, it wasn't really focused on who I was. So I revamped my teaching philosophy, and I based it around one of my favorite books, Dr. Seuss's Oh, the Places You'll Go. And I had 3 main points to my teaching philosophy. It's also in my handout. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you to my teaching philosophy with a little bit more information. But my 3 points to my teaching philosophy were clear skies of information. I wanted my students to have clear expectations of me and my class, and I wanted to be able to have clear expectations of them. My second one is we all grow here. I want my classroom to be an inclusive space where everyone's welcome. I don't want it to be a class where students think that just because they're not gonna go out and start a farm, they can't be included. And my third one is spreading roots in the community. I think this is something that's really important. Engaging with your community and showing them what your program is all about. So classroom management, up here I have my 3 classroom management posters. So I wanted to hang these on the board, but apparently these chalkboards are not magnetic in this room. I don't know, I feel like we should request for magnetic ones, but whatever. My expectations, I wanted to keep them short and sweet. So I have be respectful, this is our space, so treat it like our space. Show kindness, especially in the last year, COVID, 2 years I guess. COVID's been really hard, and a little bit of kindness can go a long way. Lead by example. I want my students to act as if someone's watching them who thinks that they're a role model. Being yourself, this goes along with everyone being welcome in my class. I think all students have something to bring to my class. And then having fun. You hear from ag teachers all the time that every day is an adventure in the ag room. You never know what's going to happen. So just having fun and kind of rolling with whatever comes to you. My second one is my classroom procedures. These are pretty standard, so completing your bell work before the start of class, being prepared to share your ideas, collecting your required materials for class, whether that be for an activity or stuff that you need before class, like pens and pencils and paper and whatever else. Ask before leaving the classroom and cleaning up your workspace before leaving. I am a clean freak, but I don't want to be a maid. So just making sure that your space is clean before you leave. And then my fourth one is consequences. I'm starting off with a verbal warning, just saying, hey, let's chill out, let's not do that. My second one is student conference, holding students after class, not holding students, they're not being held hostage. Asking students to stay after class, just asking what's up, is there any way I can help? My third one is a parent or guardian conference. So either calling home or having the parent come in to meet. And then my fourth is an office referral. If behavior really just isn't stopping, and it's becoming disruptive to my class, then I'll send them to the office and they can deal with it there. So what you're seeing now is not just a bunch of arrows on the screen. This is actually my ideal program curriculum. So if I had all the money and I was able to start a program, this is just some of the classes that students would take. So they would start off with an intro to ag. This would kind of just be a general across the board, a little bit of everything. And then there were 3 different pathways that they'd be able to take. The first one is animal science. So they start with animal science 1, and then that would lead them into vet science, which would be a little bit more advanced. My second one is plant science and plant science 2. So if they're really interested in plant science 1, taking plant science 2 to get a deeper look into those concepts. And then this would eventually merge into applications to agricultural careers. So my idea is that this would probably be seniors, maybe some juniors. This class would be all about resumes, leadership, applying to schools, applying to jobs, etc. And then my third pathway is environmental science, which would lead into sustainability. And then community leaders of tomorrow. So my idea behind that is that after they take these classes, they'll be able to go out in the community and enact sustainability projects and that kind of stuff. And then the classes on the bottom are just some electives that they might be able to take. So InTag, flow design, ag business, and food sciences and processing. This is just getting sort of an even spread of a little bit of everything. And then up in the corner, you're seeing SAE homeroom. This is something that Mrs. Hoover actually had in her program. So if you wanted to have an SAE, you had to have an SAE homeroom. And that was just time set aside in the morning to work on your SAE, ask questions, do all that jazz. I understand that not all schools have homeroom. Some schools just send their kids right to first period. So if that was the case, then we would just sprinkle SAE in these other classes, maybe do an SAE Friday, so students still have the opportunity to get their SAE time. So this brings me to my lab integration plan. We had to make a $15 lab project for Dr. Yu's class. And this right here is my $15 project. And I know what you're saying. This is literally a PVC box. And you would be correct. I know, Dr. Ewing. I know it's back there. But when we were tasked with this project, I really had trouble because I live in the dorms. And so I don't really have great access to tools or the ability to saw and cut and do all that other fun stuff. So I wanted to find a project that was small enough to store in my dorm, small enough to make in my dorm, and didn't require a ton of like power tools. So when I saw this online, it was actually used as a desk organizer. They had a different fitting on the end of it, and there was like pens and pencils and stuff on the end of it. But I figured for your ag program, if you have like a floral design program or something like that, you can put ribbon spools on it and it'll keep things organized. I don't know if anybody's worked with ribbon here, but you'll be doing something and then all of a sudden you'll have 5 yards of ribbon that way and you'll have to like collect it all back up. So this is just a good way to create something that's multi-purpose that students are able to store in small spaces, make it small spaces, especially for students that don't really have access to power tools in the space to make big projects. And then we were also asked to make a lab facilities design. And the John team is not here, which is probably good because he'd be cursing at me right now. We were asked to make this on something called SketchUp. And for the average Joe, that's not really like a builder or an architect, it's not really user friendly. So I actually made it on The Sims, something that I do know how to use. And the white door in the front of this would actually be attached to your school. So it's a classroom in a greenhouse, and I really wanted to focus on the fact that a lot of times greenhouses are detached from your school, and so that could lead to accessibility issues, especially at this time of year, even though it's not inclement weather right now, sometimes we get inclement weather. So this will give all students a chance to have access to the greenhouse facility. And yeah, sorry, John Steven, if you're watching this, I did not use SketchUp. For FFA and SAE integration, I think that all students for me will be required to have an SAE. I think this is a great way to give students a chance to have employment skills, finances, record keeping, and just being accountable and responsible for a project or an animal, or whatever they choose to do. We talked a little bit about SAE homeroom, but also something that Tiffany does, that Tiffany turned to be my cooperating teacher, does that's really cool is alternative SAE assignments. So the students actually blog, they video blog, Ron, in case you weren't sure what that meant. And they take videos of what they're doing for their SAE. And they post it on AET, which is the program that we use to insert all of the stuff about SAEs. And I think that's really cool because it's a great way for students to kind of show their personality while they're doing their SAE. Sometimes SAEs can get a little boring because you just sit on your computer and you type in your AET and it's pretty even across the board. And then for FFA, I really like the idea of FFA Friday. So picking one CD on a Friday to focus on, it gives a chance for students to see all different CDs and just kind of get a taste of which ones they like, which ones they don't like. Allowing students to focus on participating in CDs that they're interested in. Some schools do every CD under the sun, and that's really cute. But for a young teacher, I feel like just focusing on CDs that students really want to do is a good way to both keep students interested in CDs and have winning competitors. And then one required conference or trip. These are kind of great for students to make friends, network, do all that jazz. And I just think that it's a great way for students to kind of get out and branch out in the community or at national convention and just meet new people. So for recruitment I think should be representative of students. So we were actually asked to make a video for Dr. Ewan's class. Whoops, sorry. I actually used the SAL one because I think it's more representative of the students that I'm working with in the spring, obviously, because it was made by the school that I'm teaching with. Another way that you can do recruitment is elementary days, open houses, community days, just asking people to come in and see your program. And students are the best spokespeople, so sending students out and about, finding different students from the cliques of high school, and getting them to go out and share with their friends is a great way to get kids recruited. So for community integration and involvement, I think a great way to get involved with the community is working with local CSAs. I know Salt actually has a CSA on their property, so they rent the space out for different people in the community, and they're able to grow food there and kind of engage with both Salt and other community members. And then also a community-based unit of instruction, so tying in the community with something that you're doing. For me, I'm teaching a little bit about sustainability and landscaping in the spring, and I think a really cool idea would be a green space, either around the school or in the community, where students could work with community members to build this space, and then everyone is able to use it. So this brings me to my second question of what experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become a better agricultural educator? That's a tongue twister, but some key courses I've taken over the last three and a half years here at Penn State is InTag 100. This was really the first kind of dip my toe in the water moment to international ag. It was a great class, and it was kind of the catalyst for me to get started focusing on an InTag minor. My second one is Spanish 105. I just genuinely love this class. My parents are probably like scoffing over here because I actually got kicked out of Spanish in high school. And so the fact that I even made it through this class is pretty monumental, but Jaime was such an amazing professor. It was really an active learning space. It was a small class. It was me and 3 other people. And we just went and we talked about different things in agriculture and how we can use sort of a multicultural approach to communicate. And then my third one is CM Lit 108. This was Myths and Mythologies, and you guys are probably like, what the heck does that have to do with agriculture? And pretty much nothing. But this was a really great class because it was one of the only classes where I didn't know anybody. So it was a great way to meet people from literally every single college. It was sort of a general class where I think there were just random people taking it just to fulfill a credit that they needed. But also every week we would have a few different stories or folktales from different cultures. And we would talk about the cultural relevancy to these different folktales. And it was a great way to see different cultures sort of through that lens. So some certifications in professional development. I do have an InTag minor, and I am CPR certified. Not sure if I ever want to use it, but the third one is I'm a national state tractor driver. machine operator certified. And if you guys ever saw me drive a vehicle, you would understand that this is probably a mistake. I'm quite possibly the worst driver, and now I'm certified to teach the youth how to drive a tractor. So stay tuned for that. I'm not sure. And then I am an accredited parliamentarian. I took Dr. Foster's parliamentary class my freshman year, and I passed the accreditation exam. So some professional development. We just came back from New Orleans last week. And there we were able to network with a bunch of different ag teachers from across the United States and also go to some really great professional development events. And then for the last 3 years, I served as a collegiate intern for the National Parliamentary Procedure, LDE. I had a bunch of different tasks over those 3 years, event hosts and timers and all that stuff. But it was just a really great way to meet other people who like Parley Pro and meet some ag teachers and some students. And then this semester, I was a TA for AE 216 Practical Parliamentary Procedure class with Dr. Foster. And this was just a really great way to get a behind the scenes of a college class. Like, you are in college classes, but you don't really see how they work and what the professors do to make them work. So that was a great way, and it was a good way for me to see how to balance like that work, my TA stuff, plus everything else. And then my work experience, I did work in a grocery store for the 3 years and through the height of the pandemic. And working in customer service through the height of the global pandemic just really shows you who you are as a person. It gives you a lot of insight of your coworkers and especially your customers. But I was really grateful for that experience. Working with a bunch of different people, you kind of just have to get along. Sometimes you don't want to get along with them, but you have to. And I also gained some really amazing friends out of this who I can't wait to see this Christmas break. And then my big step was when I served for AmeriCorps this past summer. I was a gardening mentor for the Braddock Youth Project in Braddock, PA. So I went to Braddock every day. The commute was awful, which that was probably the only downside. I went through the 2 major tunnels in Pittsburgh at rush hour, and that was just enough to, by the end of the day, I was just done with it. But it was a really great experience for summer. We would garden, and we worked closely with Grow Pittsburgh. So we would garden, we would cook, and then at the end of the summer, the kids actually created a free fridge. So we got a literal free fridge donated to us, and the kids decorated it, and they fill it with fresh food, and it's open to the community. Anybody can go. So how am I prepared to work with diverse students? My first major experience, I guess, working with diverse populations is when we had an exchange student in my senior year of high school. She didn't live with us, but she practically lived with us. And I consider her my sister. But this was really just an honest and open way to learn about a different culture. I feel like sometimes it's hard to ask the hard questions because you don't want to offend people. But because Camila and I were so close, it was really easy to say, hey, I don't really know a lot about this, or I don't really understand this, so let's talk about it. And this is just really a great way. She's from Brazil. She's actually in Rio right now going to law school. So she's super smart, and I'm super proud of her. But this was just a really great way to get experience with other cultures in such a honest and open way. And then my second big step was when I went to Belize, and Dr. Ewing and Ketia from the International Ag took 8 girls to Belize. So Dr. Ewing was probably just having such a great time. And we traveled for 8 days over spring break. It was really awesome. We stayed with families. We were immersed in their culture. And it was really, really hot in Belize, but it was a really great trip. And then my third way is National Convention, NAAE. Me and Lacey and a few of my other cohort members went to a professional development workshop about working with students with disabilities. So Lacey was blindfolded, and I had to lead her through a strawberry DNA extraction. And this was a really great way to just learn, like, as a teacher, how can you set up the classroom to make sure it's accessible for all students. And then down here at the bottom, this is just a few points of how I have learned to work with diverse students. I also had the privilege of having my cooperating teacher here. Probably a month ago, I don't know, it feels like years ago. But she was here talking about culturally responsive teaching, and that was really great just to hear about how we can use that in our classroom. So my third question is, how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunity? My cooperating center, I am so honored to be working at W.B. Saul High School in Philadelphia. It is an agricultural high school, so students actually have to apply to go. It's not just a school where you drop your kids off in the morning and you wave bye, say, okay, I'll pick you up later. They have to submit an application and they have to meet a bunch of criteria. It's actually pretty rigorous criteria too. And so all students are in a focused program. So there's vet science, plant science, food science, etc. And I'll be under the careful watch of Dr. Tiffany Chartine and Miss Lisa Blum. So I'll be focusing on animal science and plant science. I would also like to kind of shadow a few other of the teachers while I'm there, just to kind of get a feel of how they run their classrooms. There's food science, equine science, a bunch of other classes. So just kind of seeing their program and their class. Now, evaluation of my cooperating center, some strengths is they really focus on student life after SAL. All kids have to fill out a what I want to do after SAL worksheet. And SAL really puts the hammer down and make sure that they have a plan and they have an action for how they're going to do this plan. And they stay on the students. And I think that's really great because sometimes you lose a few students and that's really hard because they have potential. The second one is SAE. All students at SAL have to have an SAE. So at the end of their 4 years, they do a capstone project, which is essentially a senior project for SAE. And I think this is a really great way to create an end goal for students. Sometimes SAE is just something else you have to do to kind of check a box. But having an ultimate end goal is a really great way to keep students engaged in their SAE project. And then the relationship with teachers and admin, because this is an agricultural school, all the teachers and admin are like totally here for ag. And that's really great. I know some schools struggle with getting their admin and teachers on board with everything, but SAL doesn't really have that problem. And then room for growth, FFA involvement, this is sort of something that's out of SAL's hands. So because of COVID and a few other circumstances in the past few years, their FFA involvement has definitely decreased. And I think it's honestly unfortunate because SAL is such a strong program and they have amazing kids. But hopefully if these issues get resolved, FFA involvement can go back up and it will be great to see Philly back at events. And then here's my course of study. If you scan one of the QR codes, I think it's on the right, you can see my master schedule for SAL. So my belt schedules, my unit plans, my lesson plans. So this is sort of just a general overview of what I'm going to be teaching. I think my dates might be a little bit off by like 4 days, but you get the gist. And then my organization system. This QR code is for my Google Drive, so this will take you right to my Google Drive. I'm the person that has to have everything in a little box with a bow on it. So good luck navigating that because it's like a little insane. And I also have my binders for my different classes, which have all my units in it. I really like to have a hard copy of everything. It just makes me feel better. So I'll probably tote this around for no reason because everyone uses digital these days, but it makes me feel better if they're in a paper copy. Sorry, is someone scanning that? Okay. So my strengths and room for growth. My strengths, as some of you may or may not know, I'm extremely timely, sometimes too much. So my friends I probably drive them crazy because I have to be 30 minutes early to everything. But I also think that's a good strength because I know in professional settings, it's important to at least be on time. My second one is organization. As I just said, I am super organized. Everything in my life has a place, and if it doesn't have a place, I probably don't need it. So I keep everything super organized, which means I usually have what I need. And then my third one's honesty. I guess this could go either way. Some people might not like this, but I'm very honest, and I think that's really important for students because students see right through fakeness, and I'm not here to be fake. And then my points for growth are fear, failure, and imperfection. I'm a perfectionist, and if everything is not up to my standards, I'm probably freaking out. So I just need to step back and say, not everything's going to work the way you planned it. Not everything's going to be perfect, and that's okay. My second one is ag mechanics. If anybody was in my 8350 class, it's not awful, but it definitely needs some work. Okay, we'll just say that. My third one's adaptability. As I said, I'm a super planner. I plan every day practically down to the minute. And sometimes my plans go awry, it has the power to upset my whole day. And I know that things don't always go as planned. And so I just really need to work on saying, it's fine. Let's just relax, Riles. It's going to be okay. And just kind of reworking my plan for the day. My goals for student teaching. I really want to engage with the local community. I know this will be sort of an interesting task because my students come from literally all over Philadelphia. But I would really like to at least engage with the local community around the school. My second one is staying connected with my cohort members. I'm classic for kind of just living in my own little bubble and just kind of putting my blinders on and doing my own thing. But also I know that I have 14 friends that are amazing people and have a lot to offer in a friendship or a professional working relationship. So just making sure that I'm staying connected with my cohort members, either on Twitter or like Snapchat or whatever. And then my third one is appreciating the time in a new place. I have literally never been to Philadelphia, and I still have never been to Philadelphia. I actually haven't been into the city, and I'm really fortunate to be staying with a really great family while I'm there. So I really just want to be able to appreciate the time in a new place, living with Andrea and her family, and just appreciating all that Philly has to offer me. And so in the end, I just want to say thank you. A lot of people have helped me throughout my journey, whether it's roommates or teachers that have never given up on me, or friends that I can't live without, the 14 people. But I really want to say thank you to the people sitting in front of me, because I know in the last 3 years I have been such a difficult kid. And there were probably times when you thought I'm never going to make it through this. And I also want to say thank you to my grandparents. I know you guys would be here if you could, but sometimes things don't work out that way. And I most importantly want to say thank you to my dad, because he was the first person that instilled a love for agriculture in me. And without him, I probably wouldn't be standing up here today. And so I definitely want to be the same hardworking person that he is. And so thank you. And with that, I'm going to get myself together, and I'm going to open it up for questions.
After a semester of having Raleigh in class, I think the words you're supposed to say are cute and gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think.
It's an excellent presentation, Riley. We appreciate you. Proud of you. I would love for you to maybe build on some of the things you ended with Saul, and help explain a little bit more about what makes Saul unique, some of the unique challenges and cool opportunities that are there, and maybe express a little bit more about how you're going to meet those challenges and opportunities, because it's different from our traditional site. So if you could explain a little bit more about those challenges and how you're going to meet them.
Yeah, so Saul's definitely probably one of the most unique schools in PA in regards to the non-traditional ag program. So Saul, I think, is one of the only urban ag programs, or what is considered an urban ag program in PA. So it is a magnet school. Students have to apply to get there. And you have to be, I think you have to have like 3.0 GPA. You have to have a certain grade in your other classes. And students bus, so they don't have a bus system. Students actually take public transportation. Some of them take public transportation for up to 2 hours to get to Saul. And so they want to be there. Saul is a several teacher program. I actually don't know how many teachers they're up to now. And each teacher is specialized. So you kind of have your own little niche. I guess you are the expert in that field that you're working in at Saul. So Dr. Tiffany Turntine, she is small animal science. So she is the expert in small animals. So with her, I'll be working with gerbils and rats and just every other little critter that runs around. But I'm really excited regardless. And yeah, so because it's an urban program, they have a lot of different facilities that they use. So they have a greenhouse, they have a full food science lab, kitchen. I don't even know what that's considered. They make really cool things. And so every student is engaged in agriculture in the school. And they each have to sort of pick a pathway. So the students I'll be working with Dr. Tiffany Turntine, they are interested in vet science. So they want to go into some field of vet science, whether that be vet or animal care in some capacity. So that's really cool because students really want to be there. It's not just I guess a dumping ground for every student that wants to be involved in agriculture. The students genuinely want to be there, obviously from applying and riding a public transportation bus for 2 hours. So hopefully that's thumbs up.
You do have someone online So Jonathan Seaman says, question for Riley. Whether it be Sims or any other 3D drawing platform, why is incorporating 21st century technology such as 3D drawing into instruction important for students' futures?
Okay, so the question was, why is it important to incorporate softwares like SketchUp or Sims, 3D drawing software into sort of my teaching to allow students to use these? So I think some great ways is not all students can just look at something and visualize it. Some kids have to have a plan if they're super planners. And so I think that these are great ways to allow students to do different projects. I know like Jenna Kibbe built concrete planters and she used SketchUp to draw the draft for her concrete planters. And so if students have a vision and they want to enact it, but they need to know the exacts for grants or scholarships or that kind of stuff, this is a great way. And it is the 21st century and everybody is using, even the QR codes that we use, Ron just couldn't handle the QR codes. So I guess keeping up with students and their ways of learning and making sure that we're incorporating the technology that they're using is a really great way to keep students engaged in learning.
Riley, I have a quick question because I'm a little bit confused and I want you to provide clarity.
Okay.
You indicated to me that you have never been to Philadelphia, yet I believe that our program has fit forms that are submitted prior to confirming a placement, saying that I have visited on site and I am comfortable with my placement and do not wish to change. Have you never set foot at the W.B. Saul High School on campus?
I have been there once. We had to do a life knowledge lesson where we had to teach about a life knowledge, leadership, different things in life. So I have been there once. At the time when we were doing our fit forms, because of COVID, they're really strict there. They're trying to keep their community safe. So there's like a no visitor policy at all. It doesn't matter who you are, what you're visiting for, there's no visiting. So I had to visit online initially and meet with my cooperating teachers. And because I'm not technically an employee, I'm a visitor until I start my student teaching, I had a hard time getting into the school, which is understandable. So my life knowledge was the only time that I was able to actually go on campus and be at Saul.
Share more about that day, please. That life knowledge day. Like, tell me what class you taught and how long you were there.
Yeah. So I went actually the night before. I stayed with my family that I'm staying with in the morning. I really just wanted to see actually how long it would take me to get there in the morning, just so I could plan ahead. So I went in the morning. I taught for I think 40 minutes with Lisa's 10th grade plant science class. So Saul has block schedule, so all classes are 90 minutes. And then for my animal science class, I actually have a double block, which I literally didn't even know existed, and it's 180 minutes. I'm someone who came from a school where the periods were 42 minutes, and so trying to figure out how to navigate 3 hours of instruction time, it like made my heart palpitate. I was like, oh my gosh, this is not happening. So I went to, I had Lisa's class in the morning, and then I had a break where she gave me a tour of her facilities. She has 2 greenhouses. And then I went down to Tiffany's classroom in the basement, and I did 40 minutes of her 3-hour animal science class. And I kind of just sat and observed. They were doing their rat nutrition projects while I was there, so I got to see how they do that during the day.
Thank you very much for sharing. And while I have you, I'm going to follow up with one more thing.
Okay.
International agriculture. You mentioned it as a class. I was really curious because I was looking at how you presented your ideal program. And this is with any content, and I want you to talk to me about the value and the difference between the 3 forms of curriculum modification, which might be substitution, addition, and integration. So the 3 forms might be considered, which I know you can interpret on your own, substitution, addition, or integration. And if I was looking at your course outline and interpreting it correctly, you were proposing to do international agriculture as an addition. Tell me about making that choice and if there's other ways that I may not be understanding how you're going to incorporate those global concepts.
Yeah, so the question was how I was going to, I guess, add INTAG into my classes by using substitution, addition, or integration. For the integration, I know SAW does a really great thing that I would love to do in my own program, where they take the 3 circle model, which is how you create a complete ag program. So it's classroom instruction, SAE, which is your supervised agricultural experience, and FFA. And they actually kind of add like little triangles of INTAG and global learning into that 3 circle model. So it's already incorporated into your total ag program. And then for my substitution, I think that possibly taking out environmental science, part of that, and adding an INTAG or global learning aspect of that pathway would be a way that we could sort of bring how does environmental science and sustainability affect places from all over the world, not just in our community and our local school.
We have some questions online. Mr. Brainer says, how will you make sure all students have an SAE?
First off, I want to say hi, Mr. Bramer, and I'm glad you're here today. But the question was, how am I going to make sure that all students are required to have an SAE? So I think something that's really great is sometimes it's hard to create an SAE because you're really not sure where to start. And if you're living somewhere where you can't just keep your market hog in your backyard, it can be really hard to meet the criteria that's needed to get your Keystone degree and your American degree. And so I think also kind of pushing the idea of employment and industry is something that's a great way to get all students involved, students that don't want to have a market animal, that don't want to farm 20,000 acres of beans or whatever. So pushing that you can work to meet your hours and your money, and that's also a really great way to meet your hours and money because you're required to do those hours. You can't just not go to work and they can't just not pay you. I mean, I guess they could, but then you'd have bigger problems than your SAE. So just kind of pushing that idea. Go ahead, Marcy.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic presentation. So I think that you are known by your cohort and some of the other members of this community as being outside of the box. So it's kind of you and then the other 14 sometimes. And I think that that's probably taken a little bit to build up that confidence, right, in yourself and your abilities and your voice, to be an innovator and to think a little bit differently than everybody. From what you've experienced going through that process of finding yourself, how can you take that and channel that into the classroom this spring when you notice some students that are kind of similar to you but haven't gotten to that point like you have?
Yeah. So the question from Carson was, how can I encourage students to sort of channel their inner self and utilize that in my classroom? So I don't know if some of you know, but in high school I had a behavior problem. I had an attitude problem, actually. I know that's really hard to believe. And so I was always getting in trouble with teachers because I was always just having an attitude. And I really think it was just an attention thing. I just wanted attention. I wanted to be the center of attention. I know that's also really hard to believe. And so knowing that and knowing how I acted in high school, I think for me, I understand why those students are doing it. And so I can say, okay, well, I know your potential and I see your potential and I know you're just probably acting out to get attention or to look cool for your friends. I know that was a big thing. And so I kind of want to harness that and push that student to say, you can be crazy, that's fine, but let's be crazy in a productive way. And I don't, if you want to make fireworks come out of your project, then do that. I don't really care, but do it.
Another question online from Morgan Bear. It says, amazing job, Riles. What skills have you gained from being a TA with Dr. Foster that you plan to take with you to WPSOL?
So the question, oh gosh, I better answer this right. So the question was, what skills have I gained while being a TA for Dr. Foster's Parley class that I will be able to take from SOL? My big one is time management. It was a small class, and even then I still struggled because there was a gap year between when the class was taken last. And so everything needed updated. They came out with a new version of Robert, so everything needed updated. And I kind of like pushed it back. I was like, oh, I'll update this before it needs to be done. And then like at NWE, they were texting, and they're like, can we have this paper and this document? And it was just like, at times it was a little bit of a mess. And so just sitting down and setting a time aside to get those types of things organized, I guess the logistical things, is something that I want to do when I go to Saul, because I know it can get like suddenly heaped into this like huge pile, and it's hard to like sift through what's the most important thing.
Questions for Riley?
So Riley, you know, I work with recruitment into the major. And I'm wondering how you would encourage students at Saul to pursue ag education. Most of our students in ag education are from a more traditional ag background. We'd love to have some urban ag students pursuing this major as well. So how would you coach and approach that?
Yeah, I guess my first step is kind of setting the scene that agricultural education is not just for people who want to teach people how to farm. I feel like there's sort of a stigma around agriculture that we're just like busting out students that want to farm for the rest of their lives, and that's really not the truth, especially as we advance through society. And so I know that Saul has a really amazing media department, and I would really love to get students, even from like the College of Ag, to work with students at Saul to kind of maybe make a recruitment video that's representative of students. We made recruitment videos here, but it was essentially just like a bunch of white college kids like recruiting for programs. And so I feel like if students feel represented, they'll be more likely to at least look into coming into this program or any program.
I want to follow up on that, and this is not expecting like I know the right answer. I'm asking a question that I don't have the answer to, and I know it's difficult.
Okay.
We want to be authentic. We want to represent in recruiting. But if you look at our major currently, yeah, we don't have a lot of students of color or students of urban areas. So how could we achieve that? What is your suggestion? You have an idea? And you can say, no, I don't. We'll all work on it in the next 15 minutes.
I think first it's addressing the hard stuff. Like obviously, sometimes there are communities throughout like rural areas and agricultural areas that look down upon urban programs because they're like, well, where are they going to use this? They live in a city or somewhere where there's not farms. So why do they need this information? But I think it's really important to kind of just reach out and say, like, you know, everyone needs to have food. Everyone needs to know where their food comes from. And so I think first off, having videos that represent, we talk about this all the time, especially going to an urban program, like you need to pick content that's representative of your students. If you're showing a video that doesn't represent the community or the students' culture, they're probably not going to care. And so just, I guess, engaging people from all different walks of life to recruit students, then students say, oh, well, I saw that one person in that video from Penn State, and they look just like me, or they had the same background as me, or whatever. They'll say, you know what, if they can do it, then so can I.
Thank you, Robin.
I'd like to kind of go off of what you said a little bit. My name's Audie, you don't know me, but that's okay.
That's okay.
So I'm really curious, because you said one of the things you want to do is get out into the community more. And I think that's so cool because, I mean, I'm from Kentucky, and we have urban areas, but they're still not that urban as Philadelphia. So like, what ideas do you have in mind to get into the community so that they know who your school is, but also that they learn more about agriculture?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is, how am I going to get out into the community and share about agriculture while I'm at Saul and possibly later on in life, wherever I go. So I think a big thing that they do well, I guess in Philadelphia as a whole, is they have a lot of CSAs, they have a lot of urban farms, and they do a lot of open house sort of community days. And I think that's a great way to both share my love for agriculture and also promote Saul as a program or just urban agriculture in general. So doing the farmers markets and the volunteer days and that kind of stuff in the local community is a great way to, one, meet community members. Like literally don't know anybody in the community. Like I know like 3 people where I'm going, and it's my 2 cooperating teachers and Andrew I've been living with. So that's a great way for me to actually meet new people and possibly network for both Saul and myself.
You have some online. So Killian says, how will you create leadership opportunities for students while students teaching in a global pandemic?
That's a great question, Killian. So the question is, how will I create leadership opportunities while teaching through a global pandemic? And honestly, it's just, I think especially for students at Saul, I'm gonna be with 12th graders, so they're getting ready to graduate. And so meeting with like industry people and that kind of stuff, and giving them a role in creating different things for their chapter is a great way that students can exhibit leadership while also connecting with people in the community, such as business people or industry people. And just giving them a role in the chapter. I know Saul, like the students are relatively autonomous at Saul. Teachers really love to give them tasks, and like they have a farm there, so I don't know what will be growing in February, but just allowing them to go out and I guess mediate their own tasks on the farm. And also Tiffany, she has classroom leaders. So when she was here for her culturally responsive teaching workshop, she actually assigned, I mean, she had a sub, but there was a student that was an older student that was sort of in charge of delegating the other students and making sure that they were on task, and they have to blog and then report back to Tiffany. And so it keeps the student leader accountable for what they were doing throughout the day.
Give a student question as well.
Yes, you have a student from Dr. Karen Penn's class. What is a modern day issue in the educational system that you want students to be aware of and also fix within the students?
So the question was, what is a modern day issue in the educational system, and how do I want to fix that within the students? I think a big thing is a push for college. I know college is really important, but I also know that college is not feasible for some people, whether it be financial or other reasons. And so I feel like we're sort of getting out of that age now where everyone pushes for college, but a lot of at least our age parents all pushed for college. They wanted all their kids to go to college. But I also think that going to out into the workforce and going to like tech and vocational schools and that kind of stuff, CTE programs, is really important because we need people to work, especially coming out of the global pandemic. You see places everywhere that are looking for workers. And so I think just making sure that I'm promoting all different walks. It doesn't have to be college. You don't have to go to college to be successful. And I think that's sort of the problem. Everyone thinks that you have to go to college and have a 4-year degree or more to make money, to have a good life, to be able to have nice things, and that's not the truth. Neither of my parents went to college, and they're great. I mean, they've given us such a great life. So I think that's something that's definitely important to promote.
We have time for one more question, Dr. Ewing.
Oh, we do? Okay, wonderful. I thought you were going to say we were done. Here we go.
Okay.
So you shared your project that you made, Riley. There you go. But you shared, maybe more importantly, that there was a limitation or a barrier that you experienced. So as a future teacher of agricultural education, when you're in a program and you have units of instruction and lessons prepared, and as you're preparing those, you realize I have an equipment or a facility limitation here. How are you going to address that? How are you going to approach that with an administrator?
With an administrator, so the question was, during my lab project, I was explaining that I had a limitation. I do still live in the dorms. I am one of the few seniors that just really like to live in the dorms, so I'm still there. While I was making this project, I didn't have great access to facilities and tools. And so how would I approach that with an administrator someday down the road if I was in a program that also had not great access to facilities or tools? I think one way that you could spin this is you could make it into a networking opportunity. So you could network with people in the industry who have said facilities and tools. Like Mr. Luther, we work with at PI, and he has great facilities and tools, and he's always willing to help. And so maybe taking like your senior shop kids or whoever to an industry or a partner that has these facilities, and asking them to do a demonstration and then allowing the students to also do said demonstration is a good way to mix your classroom while also networking and then solving the issue of no facilities or tools.
You all help me in congratulating Ms. Carter one more time. I'll conclude the public portion of this presentation. We're going to have some more time with Riley here to do some more lesson plan and youth plan things. Our next presentation will be at noon with Mr. Dylan Clark. We thank you for your time.